There is a pattern in history that has ended every global reserve currency for the past 500 years. Empires that once controlled trade, finance, and global wealth eventually watched their currency lose trust, lose influence, and finally lose value. Spain experienced it. Britain experienced it. The Soviet Union experienced it. And today, in 2025, the United States is entering the same sequence. Not symbolically, not theoretically, mathematically. This is the story of how reserve currencies die, how empires ignore the warnings until it is too late, and why the past 3 global monetary collapses point to a quiet but accelerating shift away from the dollar, not through drama, but through erosion. Before we look at the United States, we need to understand the pattern, because this pattern is not about ideology. It is not about politics. It is about the structural laws that govern global money, and those laws have never been broken. When a currency becomes the world's reserve, it gains 3 advantages. First, global demand. Second, cheap borrowing. Third, geopolitical power. But these advantages come with hidden costs, costs that quietly undermine the empire from the inside. Eventually, the currency overshoots. It becomes overvalued, overused, overleveraged. And the empire that benefits from it becomes dependent on foreign capital, foreign manufacturing, and foreign trust. This cycle has happened 3 times before, and each time, the end came faster than anyone expected. Let's start with Spain, the first global reserve currency holder. In the 1500s, Spain controlled the flow of global silver. The Spanish real was accepted everywhere. It functioned like the dollar does today. But the moment Spain controlled the world's money, the decline began. Spain stopped producing, stopped innovating, and relied on imported goods paid for with silver instead of domestic industry. They ran trade deficits for decades. Sound familiar? By the early 1600s, the rest of the world no longer trusted Spain's currency. Silver shipments slowed, debts piled up. Spain defaulted repeatedly. The reserve currency was dead. The empire followed. Now Britain. From 1815 to the early 1900s, the British pound sterling was the backbone of world finance. Nations held pounds as reserves. Global trade ran through London. The pound was as dominant then as the dollar is now. But Britain made the same mistake Spain did. They overextended militarily, spent far beyond their means, and used their financial dominance to delay economic reform. When World War I and II drained their gold, trust in the pound collapsed. The world moved to the dollar. Britain became a secondary power. Reserve currency gone. Empire gone. Then the Soviet Union. The ruble was never the global reserve currency, but the USSR provides a critical warning. They controlled massive natural resources. They held enormous geopolitical influence. And they believed their economic structure was permanent. But the collapse didn't begin with political failure, it began with currency failure. No one trusted the ruble. The government used gold and oil to buy foreign goods because its own currency meant nothing. When oil prices fell, their real reserves evaporated. The ruble imploded first. The government followed. In 900 days, the Soviet Empire dissolved without a single foreign army invading. Currency failure triggered systemic collapse. 3 cases, 3 currencies, 3 falls. Now the key. All 3 shared the same pattern before collapse. Stage 1, overextension. Stage 2, currency debasement. Stage 3, debt acceleration. Stage 4, dependence on imports. Stage 5, loss of trust. Stage 6, reserve currency displacement. Stage 7, systemic collapse. And the United States has already passed Stage 5. Let's examine where we are today. Stage 1, overextension. The United States has more than 750 military bases in 80 countries. We defend Europe through NATO. We defend Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, the Middle East. Our commitments exceed our resources. Our military budget is larger than the next 10 nations combined. Yet it is still insufficient for the global obligations we've accumulated. Spain, Britain, USSR, all three were overextended before their currency lost dominance. Stage 2. Debasement. Since 1971, when the dollar left gold, the U.S. money supply has exploded. In the last 20 years alone, the supply of dollars increased over 400%. Since 2020, more than 6 trillion new dollars were created. This is not opinion, this is arithmetic. Every time an empire debases its currency to delay economic pain, trust in the currency declines. Spain debased silver coins. Britain defended the pound at unsustainable levels until it collapsed. The USSR printed rubles that its own citizens avoided. We have followed the same path using modern tools. Stage 3. Debt spiral. The United States owes more than $36 trillion. Interest payments now exceed our defense spending. Every year we borrow more to pay interest on what we borrowed before. This is the definition of a sovereign debt spiral. Spain defaulted repeatedly. Britain borrowed until the pound collapsed. The USSR ran out of real reserves. We are not immune. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. The United States no longer produces what it consumes. We import electronics, steel, pharmaceuticals, energy components, critical minerals, and even military-grade materials. We run trade deficits of $800 billion per year. Spain imported everything while exporting silver. Britain imported cheap goods while protecting the pound. The USSR imported grain because its farms collapsed. The U.S. imports the world because its supply chains moved offshore. Dependence always precedes displacement. Stage 5. Loss of trust. This is the stage we are in right now. Central banks around the world are buying gold at the fastest rate in modern history. BRICS nations are developing alternative payment systems. Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of the petrodollar, now trades oil in yuan. China and Russia conduct trade in their own currencies. Europe reduces dollar exposure. These actions do not replace the dollar immediately, but they reduce dependence. The decline is gradual at first, then sudden. Stage 6. Reserve currency displacement. We are not here yet, but we are near the threshold. Reserve currency status is not lost through announcement. It is lost through alternatives. When global trade no longer needs the dollar, demand falls. When demand falls, trillions of dollars return home. When dollars return home, inflation accelerates. When inflation accelerates, debt costs choke the government. This is the moment Britain faced in the mid-1900s. This is the moment Spain faced in the 1600s. This is the moment the USSR faced when oil collapsed. When confidence breaks, the reserve currency snaps fast. Stage 7. Systemic collapse. This does not mean the United States disappears. It means the global financial order reorganizes. The dollar becomes a regional currency instead of a global one. The U.S. government faces severe fiscal constraint. Imports become expensive. Industries reliant on foreign supply chains break. Living standards adjust downward. Geopolitical power shrinks. The world moves on. When does this happen? History suggests the same answer every time. Much sooner than the dominant empire expects. But collapse is not inevitable. America still has unmatched innovation, abundant natural resources, and the ability to reform. If the U.S. rebuilds its productive base, stabilizes its currency, restructures its debt, and reduces overextension, the cycle can slow. But history warns that empires rarely act before crisis forces them. The decline of a reserve currency is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is a quiet, persistent shift, a redistribution of trust. It begins invisibly. Then it becomes undeniable. And finally, irreversible. Spain ignored the warnings. Britain ignored the warnings. The Soviet Union ignored the warnings. America still has time, but not much. If you want to understand what happens when stages 6 and 7 begin, and how quickly a superpower can be humbled when its currency loses trust, follow the pattern. The answers are not in the future. They are written in the past. And we're watching the pattern unfold again.